When The White Castle was released at Essenspiel in 2023, some heralded it as the most highly anticipated board game of the year. In this video, we'll learn how The White Castle is played through an exemplar turn, and I'll give you my full review, rating it on design, interaction, artistry, strategy, and complexity. Here's the player board. We're in the middle of the second round and all player boards are identical. To help you get oriented, you can think of the player board as being divided into two parts. This part is all of the things that I have, and the right side is all of the things that I can do. So let's look at what I have. At the top, I have daimyo seals, and there's space for 5 of those. I would also have money here. At this point in the game, I'm cash poor, but if I had some money, they would be coins. There is a conversion from daimyo seals to resources or money, and we will be using that in the example. And then at the bottom, I have trackers for the 3 resources in the game: food, iron, and mother of pearl. On the right side of the board are storage spaces for the 3 types of workers in the game. There are couriers, gardeners, and warriors. In this game, you'll be placing dice to perform actions. So you can see on a player board, I have 3 actions that are available to me, and what those actions can do is determined by a card that I can collect during the game. In fact, when a card is collected, it displaces the action card on your board, and the discarded action card goes down here to a bonus action, which is called the lantern action. We'll see how this works in a bit, but what I'd like you to notice is that as more and more cards are discarded, the lantern action becomes more and more powerful. What the particular action card does isn't especially important, since this card can always be changing, but what is important to notice is that every time this die action is performed, it's going to collect the food that has been uncovered from the workers that are being placed on the board. So as more workers go onto the board, the action is going to become more powerful. Let's now take a look at the entire game board. It looks overwhelming, but it simplifies to 8 areas. We start with the point tracker, a turn order marker, a round marker, and the passage of time. So at the end of each round, the player's markers on the passage of time will be compared, and whoever's farthest ahead is going to take precedence on the turn order marker. Next, we have 3 areas where our workers will go. We have the gardens for our gardeners, the castle for our couriers, and the training yard for our warriors. These are clearly the busiest regions on the board, but you'll understand these better through the example. So lastly, we have our action spaces. We have 5 in the castle, we have 2 over here, and we have 1 more which can accommodate an unlimited number of dice. These are in addition to the 3 private actions on a player's board. It's important to note that because these cards will be claimed by players and replaced during the game, that the actual actions associated with the spaces in the castle will be changing throughout the game. However, there are 3 static actions, and they're represented by these 3 symbols over here. Anywhere you see the bridge represents placing a gardener in the gardens. Anywhere you see the castle represents placing your courier at the gates of the castle, and then anywhere you see the gatehouse represents placing a warrior in the training yard. But it's perhaps best to understand by example. So it's my turn right now, and I can choose any die on the left side of the bridge or the right side of the bridge. And I'm going to choose this black 5. So because I'm making this choice, the black 2 is going to move over to the other end of the bridge, and I'm going to place it right here on the well. So placing the die here, I'm going to count the difference between my die and the action space. 5 minus 1 is 4, so I'm going to receive 4 coins. If it had been the reverse, and I was placing a 1 onto an action space of 5, I would do the subtraction and I would pay 4 coins. But I'm taking this action so I can get the coins, and I'm also going to receive a daimyo seal, 1 pearl, and 1 food. And that's it for my turn. It's now my opponent's turn, and they're going to take the red 5. This is actually something I was hoping they would do, because it makes this 6 available to me. They're going to be placing it over here, which is going to cost them no coins, or they won't receive any coins either, and they're going to perform the garden action, placing a gardener here, paying 2 food, and they get to perform their own lantern action on their player board. It's my turn again, and I'm going to take the red 6. Now, you may have noticed that the dice are organized in ascending order with higher values on the right. So, if playing a higher valued die is how you get coins, why would you ever want to take the die on the left? And the answer is because every time you take the die on the left, you get to perform your own lantern action as a bonus. So I'm going to take the red 6, and as a result of that, I get to perform my lantern action first. So my lantern action will give me 1 food, 1 advancement on the passage of time, and 1 additional coin. Now that was just my bonus action for taking a die on the left side of the board. For my action, I'm going to place the red die here. 6 minus 3 is 3, so that's 3 more coins for me. And now let's take a closer look at what these cards do. So at the game setup, these tiles were randomly placed on the board. So it happens to be the case that 2 of the tiles here are red, which means my red die gets to perform both of them. So I get to move up on the passage of time again, and for paying 1 daimyo seal, I get to perform the gardener action. I take a gardener from my own player board, and I'm going to be putting it over here, which will cost me 3 food. Now the immediate benefit of playing the 3 food is paying 4 coins so I can perform another basic action. So I have lots of coins now. I have no problem paying 4 of those. And the action that I'm going to choose is the courier action. So I'll take another courier from my own board. I'm going to be paying 2 coins to place it at the gates. And if I pay 2 mother of pearl, I can move my courier up. I don't have 2 mother of pearl, but I can spend 2 daimyo seals in order to convert to the mother of pearl. So I'll spend both of those. So I can move this courier up to the first level of the castle, or the couriers that are already in my castle up to the 2nd level. So in this case, I think I'd like that card. So I'm going to move this courier up. That also increases the in-game point value from 3 points to 6 points. And I'll take the card down, replacing my old action card and adding that to my lantern action. Now in this case, what my opponent does is very interesting. They're going to be taking the white die so they can perform their bonus action and take this action over here. And the reason that's interesting is that it's now the end of the round. And at the end of the round, we check all of the bridges to see if there are any with dice still on them. In this case, these 2 bridges have dice, so the gardeners at those bridges can perform their action again. So then the reason that my opponent took this die is to deprive me of the bonus and ensure that they can get the bonus for all 3 of their farmers. I think it's pretty clear that this game is entirely focused on mechanics. Now, I actually live in Japan and I've been to Himeji. I've toured the castle and explored the castle grounds. I think it's really cool that they have those 3 roles embodied in this game. The gardeners, the couriers, the warriors. But all of the things that the workers do in this game is very abstract. The fun in this game is about finding excellent combos. I'm also a big fan of the dice worker placement mechanic. In fact, this game reminds me a lot of one of my favorite games, Trois. So if you'd like something similar, that may be something to compare to. But in any case, this game is all about efficiency in how you use your turns. Now, there are a few elements of interaction. Of course, you saw how at the end of the round, the red player was compelled to take the white die so that they could deprive me, the opponent, of getting that gardener action. I think that's a really interesting factor to consider in your decision making. Now, in the example, I did a 2-player game, and in a 2-player game, the die that you place blocks any other die from going there. However, in a 3 or 4-player game, a dice do not block opponents. What a player can do is select a die and put it on top of an opponent's die, and when they do this, they pay or receive coins as if it was printed on the board. The number of dice that can be stacked is capped at 2, but this does really influence the value of using high-level dice. You're placing it and you're making it more expensive for your opponents. So for interaction, I think that there's a higher degree of interaction than most Euro games, which really makes the White Castle stand out. For artistry, I'm leaning towards extravagant because the components of this game are thoroughly perfected. The wooden elements, the meeples, the shapes of them, I think are very interesting and fun to play with. I love the round tracker with its design on it. The board is gorgeous. The symbols, I'm really big on symbols. I'm so excited with how consistent and easy to understand all of the symbols are. So for a tactile and clear experience, I think that the White Castle just hits it out of the park. I also want to point out that the box for this is really small. It is deceptively small. It looks like it's going to be a big one, but look, it's tiny. But there's no room in the box for anything extra. I usually like to use little containers to store my components. This game, when it's all put away, is very tight-fitting in the box. For strategy, I think this game has a great mix of both skill and luck. Clearly, there's a lot of luck because the cards that come out are going to be changing constantly, and when a new card comes out, it could be very helpful to you, or it could totally ruin what you were hoping for. But on the other end, for skill, there's so much planning that goes into setting yourself up for your following turn. As you saw in the example, I had used my first turn to get all of the resources, and then my second turn was when all of the exciting stuff happened, and I got to place all of my workers. So planning for that requires some skill, and there's also a degree of skill in watching what your opponents are doing and trying to predict what they may do and what dice could be available for you later. You saw that happen when I set my opponent up to take the 5 red die, and as a result, the 6 red die was made available for me. And then finally, for complexity, this is another one of those games that has a very simple rule set, but a very complex turn. The complexity comes from the ever-changing environment of what resources are available through what actions, and which dice are going to be coming out and how you're going to set yourself up to pay for the cost of those dice or receive income. There's a lot of factors weighing on you while the objective and the base rules are pretty simple. My final thoughts on the game. So prior to Essenspiel 2023, there was a lot of hype about this game. Now personally, I think the game was overhyped, but I also think the game is very, very good. And I appreciate games that have a limited number of turns. This is a 9-turn game with a lot of exciting things that can happen. So I really enjoy this, but there is a sort of mechanical dryness about the White Castle where the turns are fun and very eventful, but it doesn't really mean anything, and that's not really my style. I like a game like Evacuation or Revive that has more of a story to it, a little bit of significance about what's going on. Games like this, a lot like maybe Orleans, in my opinion, are a lot of fun to play because you have some really cool decisions you can make. And I really appreciate games that have a limited number of turns. Again, this is a 9-turn game. I think that's really cool. But what I really enjoy about this game is the solitaire experience. I don't play a lot of solo games, and I really enjoyed this one. I like taking the freedom to study the board and find the most effective move. And when I can do that without being rushed, that's a lot of fun for me. So generally, I think this is an excellent game, but I don't think it's like the best game of 2023. I don't think it deserves all of the praise that it had before Essenspiel. If you want to know what my favorite game was, well, you can check out my review on Evacuation. Thank you for watching this video, and thanks especially to my Patreons for supporting this channel and helping it be independent. Hope you enjoyed and found this review useful. Thanks again. See you next time. Bye-bye.